Let's see. Looks like you're going to learn about the types of government. To start off, what is government? Government is defined as the institution through which a society makes and enforces public policies. Though we can classify governments as certain types of government, keep in mind that no government, even if they are classified as the same type of government, is exactly the same. Though no government is exactly the same, all governments can be classified as certain types of government based on one or more of their basic features. Political scientists have, over time, developed many different bases for classifying governments. There are three classifications that are the most important and useful, and they are 1. Who can participate in the governing process. 2. The geographic distribution of governmental power within the state. And 3. The relationship between the legislative and the executive branches of the government. There are two main types of government, based on who can participate in the government. Democracies and dictatorships, with subclassifications of government contained within those categories. First, we shall talk about democracies and the various types of democracy. Democracies are defined as forms of government in which the supreme authority rests with the people, and the people hold the sovereign power, and government is conducted only by and with the consent of the people. There are two separate forms of democracy: direct or indirect democracy. Direct democracies, which are also known as pure democracies, is where the will of the people is turned directly into public policy or laws by the people themselves in mass meetings. This form of democracy isn't suited for large communities or countries, but it lends itself well to small towns where everyone can meet in a central place and where the problems that the government faces and that the people have to vote on are few and relatively simple. Direct democracy is not very common today, with no countries utilizing this form of government at a national level. It only really exists in the small communities, such as small New England town meetings, and in some small cantons of Switzerland. The form of democracy we, as Americans, are most familiar with is indirect democracy, or representative democracy. Representative democracy is defined as a system of government in which public policies are made by officials selected by the voters and held accountable in periodic elections. What this basically means is that we, the people, elect a small number of people that we believe are the most qualified to make laws to create the laws that govern us. The United States is the prime example of an indirect democracy. The other most important type of government, based on who can participate in the government, is a dictatorships. Dictatorships can be defined as forms of government in which the leader, or leaders, have absolute power and authority. Dictatorships exist where the people who are in charge aren't held responsible for their actions by the will of the people. Dictatorships are probably the most common, and the oldest, forms of government in history. All dictatorships are authoritarian, meaning that the people who are in charge have complete and utter power over the people. The power is unchallengeable. A characteristic typical of dictatorships, though more common in modern dictatorships, is that of being totalitarian. A totalitarian dictatorship is where the people who are in charge, whether that be one person, as in an autocracy, or a group of people, as in an oligarchy, have complete power over all human affairs. All of these characteristics tend to lead to oppression. Woo! Okay. The two types of dictatorships are autocracies or oligarchies. Now, we shall be talking about autocracies. Autocracies are defined as governments in which a single person holds unlimited political power. One of the most famous autocracies of today is the regime of Muammar al-Gaddafi of Libya, because of all the controversy going on in that country right now. Next, we shall be talking about oligarchies. Oligarchies are the other kind of dictatorships, but instead of one person being in control, a group of people hold all the power. This group of people that hold most of the power is usually a pretty small group. The The other main way that governments are divided is through examining the relationship between the legislative and executive branches of said government. The main types of government that are based off these classifications are parliamentary governments and presidential governments. Presidential governments are defined as governments that feature a separation of powers between the executive and the legislative branches of the government. The United States is the best example of this type of government. It was actually the country that first invented the presidential government. In a presidential government, the chief executive is chosen independently of the legislature, holds office for a fixed term, and has a number of significant powers that are not subject to the direct control of the legislative branch. The other type of government, a parliamentary government, is defined as a government in which the executive is either the prime minister or premier, and that official's cabinet. The prime minister and their cabinet is actually part of the legislative branch, which is called the parliament. Therefore, the executive is chosen by the legislature, as is a part of the legislature, and is subject to the legislature's direct control. I hope you had a good time learning about types of government with us. Have a great day. Goodbye.